Welcome to the Now and Future of Generative Design webinar. And I am your host, Evan Troxel, host also of the Troxel podcast, which we'll have a link to at the end. And I'm an architect. I am a newly minted architect in the state of Oregon, actually. So I already had my California license. Now I'm a dual state license. Well, I'm registered in Oregon. I'm licensed in California. Everybody does it a little bit differently. So that's kind of a fun little development. And I think this is the first place I've said that because I just literally received it in the mail when I got back from vacation. So that was kind of cool. Anyway, Troxel Podcast is a podcast that is all about the coevolution of architecture and technology. And if you haven't heard of it, I ask that you check it out. And I love talking about architecture and technology and the intersection of those and how the profession is changing and sometimes not changing, right? I think everybody here is pretty familiar with that. So I'm also joined today by Britton Langdon, and Britton is the Chief Strategy Officer at Snaptrude. If you haven't heard of Snaptrude, check it out at snaptrude.com. Britton is coming to us, like he said, from Iowa. And he's a great guy. I got to hang out with him a little bit at Autodesk University last year. And then we're also joined, of course, by Clifton Harness, who is the CEO at TestFit, who's coming to us from Dallas this morning at TestFit HQ. And I'm going to open this up with asking Britton, tell us your story so that we can jump into this.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Britton Langdon, like you said, Chief Strategy Officer here at Snaptrude. Snaptrude's a cloud-based collaborative design software. For those of you who don't know the software, maybe basically couples the ease of use of SketchUp and freeform design, a little bit of Rhino, with the power of BIM data that you might get from products like Revit. So new up and coming software, but really focused on conceptual design today. And that's why I think I'm here with Clifton. But my background is I actually come from the MEP side. I worked for a mechanical contractor here in Iowa for handful of years. We developed a software and spun it out that helped us manage the BIM aspects of the MEP side. So it was a plug into Revit, as well as all of the offsite construction or prefabrication efforts that we had as an organization. So think of an iPad app on the shop floor where the people can see the model. It automates cut lists and things like that in the shop, but then it lets you track everything all the way to the field. So from BIM to fab to field. I was very fortunate to have sold that company to Stanley Black & Decker in 2022. I went to work for them where I met Altaf Ganihar, who is the founder of Snaptrude. We got to talking pretty much every weekend, just sort of founder to founder type conversations. What do I do here? And what did you do there? And you know, talking about all the amazing things he was doing at Snaptrude on the technology side that I was just amazed by. And then eventually he asked me to come work for him and be a part of the team. And I jumped over there in August of last year and have been there ever since. So my job is basically all things go to market, but also, you know, be a sounding board for, you know, the many brick walls I ran my face through at my previous company, and hopefully to help avoid doing that here. So that's me.
Nice. Yeah, and congrats to the whole Snaptrude team and Altaf and you guys are putting together a really incredible program. And again,
Mm.
for those who haven't seen it, go to snaptrude.com, check it out. It really is the things that Britton just said come together. It's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but in a really nicely done way. And it's all done in the browser. It's pretty incredible what you guys have put together. So,
Thank you.
all right, let's move on to Clifton. Clifton, tell us a little bit about you and TestFit.
Yeah, hey, Clifton Harness, co-founder, CEO here at TestFit. We build feasibility software for commodity buildings, so apartment buildings, office buildings, data centers, industrial, retail, strip centers, and most importantly, parking. Like we are obsessed with automating parking. Some of those brick walls that like Britton was talking about, like on the go-to-market side, like we were talking in London, and like I don't know, like it was really good to know that there was someone that had gone through some of those brick walls at another, you know, company beforehand, and like is it Snaptrude now. Anyways, I was just really encouraged to know him. And like I think architecture tech world, like we're like this is a good thing to have more seasoned people help us deliver technology. So Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
let's I'm really interested in generative design. Have been since I think the first time ever touched Grasshopper. But Evan, I'm just curious. Like you'd kind of been around for much longer than I have
You
on
see my
the
gray? Yeah, you can see
yeah
my gray. Yeah.
the AEC tech space. And Britain's like 2 minutes into AEC or architecture specific.
Yeah.
Here's tech. Like, what's the evolution? What was it like in the early days? What was your perspective?
The trend that I've seen is things have just gotten more and more and more complicated, right? And we put more complexity into our projects. So my background is in on the design side. And so I've used all those conceptual modeling programs. I'll just date myself, and my real first 3D modeling was done in Form Z. I mean, you could technically say it was done in AutoCAD with the 3D face command. And man, and so I've kind of been through a lot of that. I grew up on MicroStation, and that was my CAD before I was for everybody was basically forced to move to AutoCAD at some point because it was the ecosystem of AEC for, files, and it was always such a pain to translate files and do all those, between MicroStation and AutoCAD. Uh, 3D was a game changer because before that it was physical models, right? Like that's how we did. You talked a little bit about that when we were just doing our intro banter, right? Of building a model and having somebody critique it, and you'd put your heart and soul into it, and they would just crush it, right? They would say, "Have you thought about it like this?" and rip a piece off of it or flip it upside down and just crush you. So yeah, I mean, I've seen the transition from analog to digital in this space. I've interviewed Brad Shell of he's one of the co-founders of SketchUp on my podcast. And to hear him tell those stories of bringing that product to market was absolutely incredible. So I encourage you guys to check out that episode. It was a fun one. He's a great storyteller. Um, but then so FormZ, SketchUp, right? Rhino, and you can see the progression of complexity being put into this process. And I think that something that I'm seeing now to just kind of, the two ends of the rainbow here. At where we are now, it's like things are actually getting easier for people to use. And this is truly the democratization of technology in this space. When it actually gets to that point where you don't have to be, the pilot of the 747 with all the bells and whistles, all the dials, all the knobs, all the switches. I mean, there are definitely people out here who have made a career in this audience today of being experts at that kind of stuff. And at the same time, like it's really one of those brick walls that you've talked about, Clifton, right? It's like this is a barrier to entry for a lot of people. And when you think about small firms versus big firms, it's even more stark of a contrast, right? The big firms have the resources to have people in those specified roles and doing those really specialized expertise kind of tasks. Small firms are just like they just throw their hands up in the air, and that's why they're still using AutoCAD, right? That's why they're still using SketchUp because there's no time to learn. There is so much that has to be invested. I mean, and it is an investment, right, into those things. But that's, I think, what I'm very excited about seeing with the tools that you guys are making as examples and others out there where they truly are getting simpler. The user experience is fun. Everybody here today knows what it's like to beat your head against a wall of some of these apps that we are forced to use every single day, right? And it's not fun to use, and it makes the job not fun, and it's more about workarounds than it is about getting things done. And so just kind of riffing off of your prompt there, Clifton, like
Yeah.
these are the things that are coming across my peripheral vision. So anyway, I think this would be a great time to maybe start to get into a little bit of demos and see what we're talking about when it comes to generative design. And maybe right before we get into the first demo, Clifton, do you want to give a little bit of history of generative design from your perspective because you've been in this space for a while?
How how I see it.
Yes, from Clifton's point of view.
All right. Well, okay. So design four, my sophomore, yeah, I think no, design five, my junior year of college, uh, is Rhino and Grasshopper, and it was, build a script to do X, Y, and Z. And um I'm an emotional, not super logical person by nature. So like, okay, give me CAD, I can tell it exactly what I want it to do and it'll do it, right? And this was even harder because you have to think through multiple process steps, logically to get to a place where a script will actually do something meaningful for you. Wow. Okay. So you get like the first thing running, and then you get on, you're 38 tutorials in, you've learned a completely 5 new apps that you don't really intend to use beyond what the studio is. And yes, you could, in this 2013, 2014, you could go do, Galapagos, and you could go do generative design in search of a answer, right, to a question. But the amount of energy that I could see, at least from being an architecture student, to like go do that was insane. So I was like, all right, well, I'll try it again later when I'm older or something. So then I get into practice, and I actually have like real problems that I could use Grasshopper to solve. Um, and but I don't get any resources from anyone to actually go, spend time to learn it and go build it. And so I just gave up, built it all in Excel. Um, and all the while, like, refineries coming out, like it's getting better, and there's slightly better tools, but nobody, from my opinion, like my perspective, it had been like, wow, like let's attack like a parking garage, and let's make a generative design script so useful that 300 architecture firms would all want to use it, something like that. And I didn't see anything like that. And so I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then, we go to solve the first version of TestFit because I don't see any sort of curated generative design experience for someone that is like an architect. It's for like computational designers and like people that are in the homebrew world of how we might do this, right? Tinkerers in a way. And then so Ryan, my co-founder, it was like describing what just a script would do to get one building to generate, and amazingly, if you do that well enough, like you can build a pretty good business on top of that. And that's what we did for 6 years, just very specific script, very specific building types. And so you build up this language of, nouns, verbs that like the machine can understand. And then you start to run into another problem, which is when you have so many bespoke configurators, you then create a really hard training environment for people to start to learn that software. So I think back to the early days of like Revit, where the main complaint from architecture was it's forcing me to think about buildings the way that the software wants me to think instead of the way I want to think about buildings. Well, we ran right into that same exact problem. Like TestFit customers had to start to learn how TestFit wanted to think about buildings instead of just aiming for like an objective. So when the user experience was so bad and it became overwhelming to onboard more people, then the right technology to choose, in my opinion, was generative design, so that the technology could get out of the way of the user. So it was like a 7-year sojourn into, let's build Revit, but for buildings, to realize that maybe generative design was the end goal, or the medium term goal for us, at least at TestFit. And all the while, there's like a lot of people that were creating generative design tools that relied on this weird user experience, which was like, I'm going to click a button and it's going to fire off, to a server, generate 9 million options that are all garbage because they kind of are, and they come back, and then the role of the architect is to sort through those options. And so TestFit, I think, gained some really great vision because we were local compute. Like we could generate a scheme for an IBC compliant multifamily building type 3 in a millisecond. okay, well, crap, let's scale that. Let's give it more threads. Like, what if we let it solve everything all at once? So I don't think that the grand plan was to go do generative design, Evan, but anyways, I think we're at like epoch, like version 1 of minimally viable and easy to use as a site planning tool, like was released by TestFit in the middle of the summer this year. And now that's kind of what I think is like the gold standard for, okay, if you want to go actually build a software that does this, it needs to minimally look like this. And then immediately in my mind, which is why Snaptrude's here, is like, it leads to this next problem, which is like, if generative design is actually this powerful and it's proven to be this powerful, the next core problem to solve isn't in the site level, it's inside the building. And which is and in my opinion, like a much harder problem to solve than just generating a building to begin with. So
Yeah, interesting.
there's my history. Is that
I
accurate?
approve. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
okay.
you. Thank
All
you.
right.
I think that's helpful because the title of this is the now and the future, but I think we needed a little bit of how we got here to kick this off. So you just mentioned that you think we're at like version 1 of this. So maybe you can show us version 1. So let's do a screen share here. And you're going to have to talk over this. This goes by very quickly, folks, for those of you who are going to be watching this. This is a quick demo to just give you a taste of what TestFit is doing. So I'll let you guys take it from here.
Of course, the video crashes, then I'm going to go there. But
Of course,
you're
it's a live demo. Yep.
You ready, Clifton?
Yeah, so we're gonna run a quick video and then I'm gonna analyze it in another slide.
So tell us what's going on while just what's going on here to set some inputs.
Users setting the power constraints for what they want to do with the data center. And then they are generating 10,000 options in data centers. And here's locally, a bunch of options. So
that went super fast. So yeah,
yeah,
so
no,
let's
no,
look
yeah,
at some
like
key
we're,
pieces of the
this is,
UI here. Yeah.
so that when I talk about like getting the software out of the way of the users, so I'm saying it happens so fast that the generative design layer wasn't really even meaningful, right? So here we have parking and building type. So I'm going to start on the top left. We have filters for, what kinds of things you want to allow TestFit to generate. So we're starting out, we're not allowing it to generate anything except for structured parking and precast parking. And then we're going to set our filters. So right now we have units, unit average, parking ratio, net rentable square footage, efficiency percentage, height, floor area ratio, dwelling units to the acre, impervious coverage percentage, stall count, building coverage percentage, critical power, and parcel count as filters. So you can plug in all of these as a filter, and you can set the minimum and the maximum in a range. So multifamily, any multifamily configurator type we've built is supported in this. So you want to do a Texas donut and generate 20 million options in the screen at the same time, you can. And then you can apply filters to it, like only show me things that are at least 83% efficient. Only show me things that are within these zoning constraints. Which is what the second screen is about, which is the solution explorer. So we've basically taken every solve down to a single KPI in a bar chart. So right now we're sorting by the net rentable square footage from top to bottom. And the user is like on the 7th scheme. And it's showing that the 7th scheme's got, basically the same amount of net rentable areas. A lot of the schemes near it. So this gives at least the users a quick way to get a KPI read on like what it is that this scheme is. And schemes in this generative design world are more like solves. Like they're not really valuable. Like you can't, like they're not valuable to you as the user unless you want to save them and use them later. So any questions on sort of where our generative design tool is today?
Yeah, and I just want to throw it out there for those of you who are in attendance, if you please use the Q&A tab at the bottom here to enter your questions for us. That would be really useful. We're going to rerun the demo here. So don't put your questions into the chat if you actually have questions that you're pointing towards those on the panel today, use the Q&A tab. Chat's great too. Go ahead and chat it up. But you can watch kind of the solve run here again in real time.
Yep.
And this
then
is not
just
sped up correctly, correct,
no,
Clifton?
this one's not. No.
Yeah. Great.
So
Okay.
the goal was a user experience that is actually meaningful to an architect, right? Not the best possible building using these tools.
Yeah.
That I think we can now begin like that journey. How do you get to the best possible building
And
with the user?
can you just go over the types of solves that you do again? Because a question that just came in is, can you show a residential example? So maybe you can just talk about the types of solves that TestFit is solving for.
Yeah, so right now I'm just showing data centers here. If you'd like to see like live demonstration of this, feel free to go to our website and look for content or a meeting with us. But housing, includes high density stuff, double loaded corridors, middle density stuff, garden apartments, 4-story walk-ups, and then low density housing on the low end, and then single family homes. So that's just the housing range. So, from the smallest deal to the largest. And then you've got some construction constraints. You can plug them with modular, industrial warehouse, a really big one that we do. And then hotels and office are sort of minimally viably supported. But many people are using some of the configurators in conjunction with others to make mixed use deals. And so there's a lot of complexity that the app can go through.
Can you talk about where this fits into the design process? Because I think there might be some confusion about what this tool is actually used for. Like it's
Yeah.
and you talk about this in a really great way. You kind of talk about this being a tool in search of a program. I mean, for architects, and when it comes to the word, what program means, right? Is like what is going to be included in the building or buildings on a particular site in a particular location. So maybe you can set the stage of where TestFit fits into the overall life cycle of the design process.
So program creation is something that typically an owner will go through, right? So in real estate development, when I'm working in real estate, or what was working in real estate development, like our goal before we even talked to an architect was to know that we needed, 300,000 net rentable area in order for this building to work. And we would spend an absurd amount of time coming up with those programmatic goals. And what TestFit does is it takes spatial constraints into account and enables those programmatic goals to be, fleshed out a whole lot faster. Lots of owners rely on architects for that service too. So concept planning or concept design or early concept is sort of what the industry kind of calls it. So I don't consider what TestFit does to be architecture. I consider it to be like a risk adjusted spatial diagram for a starting point to jump into SDs,
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
And we do have some customers that are like they design their buildings for documentation. So they'll set units in certain ways so that when they put it into Revit, like it's already in CD, like it's already CDs, ready for CDs. So there's people are clever with how they use TestFit to get, to accelerate process, but it's not our goal.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that this is kind of at the deal making. This is like land use. This is developer kind of. You're talking about real estate. You're talking about feasibility. You're talking about like what works on this site. Does that pencil out? Because you actually tie values, dollar values, to what people are seeing on the screen, right? When it comes to all of those units, the count, the layout, the parking, usable area, number of floors, all of that is kind of being figured into this. So again, there was a lot going on that interface, and it went by very quickly. But there is a lot going on here, and it is really in service to making the best design decisions early to put the project on the right path, right? Like that's really the goal here. And then you're going to take that and you're going to do a lot of stuff on top of what TestFit spits out to continue along in the design process. Cool.
Exactly.
All right. it's Britton's turn here. So Snaptrude fits in a different spot in the design process. And so, Britton, you've got a short video here. Feel free to narrate over the top. But of course, I think people are going to probably want to see it a couple of times. And I know you're
And I'm going to
controlling this.
stop it.
So,
Yeah, I'm going to
okay.
stop it here and there
Okay, great.
as we
So
go.
take it from here.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, Snaptrude, before I jump in, is really its genesis was on the fact that, you know, all of the design software we have today was built off of a technology stack, late 90s, early 2000s, and that the ability to do amazing things like what TestFit does is difficult to do in that technology stack. So Althoff, you know, I always say that like building a software or building a solution for workflows across AEC, but really anything you do is like every feature or functionality is like a little puzzle piece, and a
Mhm.
team works really hard on building that puzzle piece. Only the full puzzle isn't known, and it's dynamically and dynamic and ever changing. So when you base the ever changing and ever growing puzzle on a flimsy table, eventually that table is going to fall over. And so we believe that at some point you just got to throw the puzzle pieces off the table, build a better foundation, and start over. And so building that early design workflow that you can take and take a beautiful concept like what TestFit's doing from a feasibility and really knowing where the money's going to then, okay, well, what does this actually look like? How do we design this thing and make it beautiful? Whether that's a commercial building like a, I don't know, school or a hospital or an office or multifamily high rise, doesn't really matter to us. We're looking at it from the ground up. And so with this video, you're going to see, we can obviously draw from scratch, like I said earlier, freeform design like SketchUp or parts of Rhino. But in this case, it's taking that program that Clifton was talking about and literally a CSV and dropping it into the system. And that'll create all of the sort of cubes that you might see right here laid out as you might want. So by size or floor, you know, room type, whatever it is. And you can see them colored based on that room type on the CSV a minute ago. And then the idea is to take and stack that program however you want from a form perspective. How do you want to make this look? And obviously, as an architect, you're going to get creative and create multiple options, present those back to your client. And let's say you come up with one final design like this. We have some functionality that labels these spaces, but more than just labeling them, it's something we call smart labels. It'll actually change the design of that space as you go forward. So you'll see in a minute, we'll take this to BIM level content, which actually using Revit families. And if that is a garden or a site, like you see this green space, the site's going to drop flat and be used as your FAR calculation. If it's a pool or a water body, it's going to drop and be that color and take that shape and not be calculated in your areas, things like that. But as we go forward in more and more generative design, we're using these space types to actually populate the room as it becomes a BIM model with the right furniture, the right wall types. So example I always give is, you know, if it's a fire rated wall you need, the actual wall that gets populated as a Revit family will be a fire rated wall, but so will the door. So you don't actually have to worry that a junior architect may have not placed the right door and that quality check takes time. We're going to make sure that that's done for you automatically.
Nice.
So here we go.
Who out there has done the stacking and blocking diagrams that he's showing right now millions of times? Raise your hand in the
Yeah,
chat.
absolutely. And then what we're about to release, or actually just have released, is the ability to use AI as sort of an early stage rendering. This is so you can take that ideation a little further than just blocking and stacking and see what this might look like without having to take a whole bunch of effort and run it through one of the powerful rendering engines that exist today. This is, you know, most of our clients today are using, or customers today are using this internally. They're not using it with their clients. They're using it as a team to sort of think through what they might want to present to a client. And then they go and do the full design, like you'll see here, to actually turn that thing into BIM elements. So use that as a concept, use that as a maybe the beginning of what you might want it to look like. Then you can use our automation functionality that actually lets you grab your Revit families, turn it into those things, and then begin to take and iterate through that process. So you can kind of go back and forth. We call it LOD hopping. you can go back and forth between design phases as you get closer or sometimes further away from what the client expectations are.
Maybe there's students out there who don't know what LOD is. Maybe they do, but can you just explain what that is real quick?
Sure, level of design. So, your early level of design 100, 200, and then, where I lived in the MEP world was 400 and higher levels. It's just the level of fidelity or complexity that you get the model to based on your client requirements. So, if they're wanting to see a full MEP layout or, they're wanting to see, I don't know, even furniture layout, that's obviously a different level of design than just massing or early stage BIM like you see here.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
what
so
I'm seeing with both of these, I'll get to you here in a sec, Clifton, is that you guys, like somebody said the key word earlier, which is workflows, and so old software put us in charge of defining all the workflows. We had to figure it all out, and often that meant hopping from app to app, right, and trying to import and export and save data to get it from one app to another, or maybe we even had to redo it. So there's a lot of this looping that's going on. And what I can really appreciate from what I'm seeing in both of these is you guys are really solving workflow related problems, which are the actual problems that architects have, right? Because we don't have time to figure what file type, what were the settings that I needed to remember to get from here to there. And you guys are really streamlining, and which really compresses that, which saves us a lot of time so we can spend more time working on the building. Does that sound accurate?
Absolutely. As you're designing all this, you see the square footages you're calculating, but we're using those to inform your area calcs and your planned versus actual, or you know, and then obviously going forward, we're using that to inform cost. So we're able to see that a operating room cost is different than a patient room, and so your price per square foot in terms of your own internal calcs should be different, and we're going to give you the ability to set that. So yeah, kind of aggregating a lot of the stuff that's difficult to track and very tedious, taking that off your plate and making it very easy to do here so that you can spend the bulk of your time on the design elements that you actually want to do and care to do.
Yeah. Clifton, you were going to say something.
I really like, if I'm hearing the spirit of the tool correctly, it's like maybe in a future iteration, like I drag some combustible element into a room and the room knows that it needs to be fire rated. The door, like the door, no, like allowing that sort of friction that exists in architecture is like, oh, I have to remember to do X every time something else changes.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's like the spirit of that's particularly freeing, I,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So that, I mean, I just inspired by that in a way. And then also just like managing the data, like something that's present in TestFit is just all the data is tabulated automatically. Like I don't think any new tool will be able to get away with like what the way SketchUp does quantities, which is like you get a paint bucket out and figure out,
Mm-hmm.
color everything differently. Like
Yep. Been
um
there.
it's like it's part and parcel of like the next generation apps. Is like schedules are just automatically done.
Yeah.
Um
Which is awesome,
well,
right? That's the part that nobody wants to
yes.
do, right?
Yeah.
Let's just
Well,
point
yeah,
that out. Like when it comes to automation, we're looking to automate the stuff that people don't want to do, like parking layouts for that's just a great example, right? Like how many parking lots do we actually need to draw again? I hope the answer is getting closer to zero every single time, right?
Me too.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about again, getting back to the title, the now and the future of generative design, and just you guys building generative design tools. I think about the hype cycle of generative design, and I know that even generative design is kind of a trigger for a lot of people out there, right? Like at least it used to be.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably, we're starting to hear it again. And so I think about the hype cycle, and I think about, the peak that we were at when Refinery was out, for example, when it was just like everybody's going this direction. This is how we're going to do it. And then, like you said, Clifton, then the architects had to be the filter, and that sucked too, right? It just made a new sucky job for people. But the intention was good, right? Um, we've gone through the trough of disillusionment potentially. Now we're talking about this kind of useful generative design actually proving value. I would love for both of you to kind of take that as a jumping off point to just talk about creating generative design tools and what you see in the future of design tools, because Clifton, you alluded to the fact that this is maybe an actually useful version one. So where are we going? What is the future of generative design, and how is it valuable for architects specifically and in the AEC industry as a whole?
Easy question. Britton, you want to start?
No, sir.
Um, I don't know. Like, I've got a mentor that I really respect, and he's like, I don't understand all these new tools. Like every year we get new tools, and like at the end of the day, like 20 years of new tools. I went from CAD to this. He's about 64, 65. It's like I don't think anybody's any happier. Like
Yeah.
in what they do, right? So I don't think we're like you're gonna find happiness through the technologies that you build, but I do think you can find some freedom. Um, like for me, like I would never recommend like drawing parking lots, because it's incredibly boring. But okay, spend time perfecting and having complete ownership of that problem. And it's freeing now. Like, I was a slave to it as a software founder, and then, giving other people freedom from it is incredibly rewarding. And so I think if you look into what as an architect, especially people that didn't stop it 2 years into their career and say, screw it, I'm gonna automate parking, they're in year 40 or something. There's a wealth of information that is in your head that you can go work with a startup or build one yourself. And, there's people working on it in healthcare all over the place to go build those rules so that generative design systems and AI systems can free others from problems that you spent a career mastering. And I think that the way I look at it now is like the future of all of us is how willing we are to contribute our empathetic knowledge to one another so that we can get better at building, so we can get
Mhm.
better as a community. And unfortunately, like design bid build contracts make it really hard. A
Yeah.
lot of stuff out there makes it really hard. And there's a lot of finger pointing. And, you got Britton's from MEP, and I'm from like finance development, and we're trying as hard as we possibly can to get tools for architects. Empathetic tools, like I'm sure Britton has stuff that he wanted at a much lower level in MEP that just weren't like it was never going to happen in Revit. And there's
I
stuff
can give
that,
you I give you a perfect example of generative design. There's a guy named Brett Young. If you don't know him, you should check him out. He
yeah,
wonderful guy, built a company called Building SP back in the day. He had auto clash detection and auto routing of MEP components. Started with electrical, got all the way down the road of getting the algorithms just right, except for the processing power of Revit wasn't strong enough to actually do the generative design, and so he got stuck. And he went to Unity and tried it there, but getting an ecosystem like AEC to change from the standard tools to some new tool just for one function, it has to be so compelling and so much better
Mhm. Mhm.
that a lot of companies like Brett's didn't have time to get it done. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff, really low hanging fruit that it's just another puzzle piece that you have to put in place. And the question is adoption. It's not worth anyone's time to build a bunch of stuff that no one's going to use. And you know, I would say the future of generative design is largely in the hands of the people that tell us how to build it. What are the big problems that you need solved as an architect that we have the technical and business capability of actually solving. Clifton and TestFit have different skills and different goals than our team and Snaptrude, and that's awesome. Like
Yeah.
that should be celebrated. So I think that's a really powerful thing for the future of generative design. What gets solved? is probably what's the squeaky wheel. You know, what's the most painful thing in your workflow that you want to get rid of? Let's go after that, because that's what you're ultimately going to be willing to pay for, and what we can support and grow from. And for us today, that's early stage concept design, taking that CSV spreadsheet and away from drawing those little blocks and stacking them, you know, from 3 to 5 hours of taking that spreadsheet data now down to a couple of seconds. And then, you know, using that data of your past designs to understand how you want a conference room laid out whenever you label it as such, right? How you want a school classroom, how many desks should be in there based on the size and things like that. Just little stuff that sounds dumb saves people a ton of time and effort. That's where I think we can really make a big leap from really sexy, cool stuff to really boring but powerful stuff like placing furniture, that can really save a ton of time for people.
Kind of
Dude,
getting
placing
back to this
furniture
idea.
automatically isn't sexy.
Maybe, but depends on who you ask, I think.
Getting back to this idea of complexity and kind of the stuff that you guys have shown, I think there's a lot of people who work in large firms out there who said, "Yep, we've built that. Yep, we've built that part. We built the Jello cube generator from the CSV. We built the parking lot layout thing." Like, and the firm that I used to be the director of digital practice at, yep, we built all that stuff. And maintaining that code base is incredibly difficult, because people move on. Everybody knows in architecture, like there's this in and out kind of cycle retention is difficult when it comes to super users, especially. And to see these kinds of tools being put into platforms that are maintained by entities who have the ability to maintain those and make them better, I just don't want that to be lost on people. Because I think some people will look at this and be like, oh, I don't need that because we built that. And I would just add, like, if you had to go in and make a change, how hard would that be? Right. And often it's very, very hard. Right. And maybe the person doesn't even work in your firm anymore. Maybe it broke. Maybe it doesn't do this special use case, whatever. So I just want to point that out to people when they're thinking about tools like these is like, where do you want to spend your time? Do you want to spend your time making those tools? And I applaud tool makers. And for very special things, yes. But for the commodity, to use a word that Clifton uses all the time, the commodity items in AEC, man, like I don't want to spend my time coding for that or being a super user for that. I'd rather be designing the actual use of, the building, the aesthetic, the all of the things that come along with being an architect. We do have some questions here and in the Q&A panel, and I want to get to as many of those as we can. We are, 42 minutes into this from our 9:05 start time. I don't want to keep everyone here forever, and we want to maybe highlight a couple of questions. If your question doesn't get answered, you can follow up with these two individuals. They are incredibly personable and will take the time to answer many, many questions. Maybe not every single question that gets asked, but their websites also answer a lot of these. So the one that is at the top of my Q&A panel says, are the 20 million solutions saved on some server, and can we use our own servers instead? This is pretty much related to investment information security restrictions. Clifton, you want to take a swing at that one?
Sorry, I was reading the other question. It was very long.
Okay. It's asking about the solutions. Are they saved on a server, and can they use their own servers, their own compute instead because of information security restrictions?
TestFit is a desktop installed app. All of it stays local on your own machine, unless you want to save it and put it into the TestFit cloud to share. Let's see. The TestFit cloud is based on a partition per company, so like it's encrypted and secure, so nobody else can see your data. If you do want to share your information, let's see, what else can I say? And we only save solves that you have saved to your local save file, so you're not going to get all 10,000 options.
Nice.
No, you cannot access this through your own server. If you need more than 25,000 solves in a 10-minute period, you can get on a plane, fly to Dallas, and explain the investment to me. So
There you go. All right. So a question, I think this maybe applies to both of you. Maybe Britton, you can start with this one. It says, do you have users that export to Revit who then change upscale LOD, but then realize they need to make overall design changes to the scheme? That never happens. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So leading to lose the changes in Revit. If so, how do you tackle that?
Yeah, we all the time. We have a really strong interoperability with Revit, bidirectional. So you can take a model from Snaptrude to Revit, and you can take a model back from Revit to Snaptrude. You can make changes in Snaptrude, and they will sync to Revit, sort of like a publish process that I'm sure everyone's familiar with. But I think one of the use cases we had a customer do is they were designing a 14-story mixed use building in Canada, and the top floor got bought out as 2 penthouse apartments. And those 2 buyers wanted to change the layout and configuration and all sorts of things. So they brought that actually back into Snaptrude, where you can do that design in a more design friendly space. Did the rest of the other 13 floors in Revit, and then they brought the 14th floor design back to Revit. It synced perfectly back in there. No data loss. It's basically as smooth as it could possibly get in the industry today.
And I don't know that if you said this, maybe you did and I missed it, Britton, but so Clifton just said that TestFit runs locally on your computer, but Snaptrude?
Snaptrude's cloud based, so we run on Amazon Web Service as a rule. However, WeWork is our largest customer, I would say, by dollars today, maybe users as well. And they have their own dedicated server for their own security purposes. So there's an instance of Snaptrude running on their server. We have to do that for government work as well, obviously, for the the FedRAMP and other certifications that we're going after. You got to be able to do that. So we're able to separate it to their own server for them.
Okay, so it is access through the browser. It's not a desktop-based application.
It is all browser based. However, it does work offline for a number of changes you can make in the model before you have to sync back live. But yeah, it is cloud based.
Okay, great to know. Thank you. All right, next question here is I think this is relating to maybe parking with TestFit. Do these presets filters include standard vehicle sizes, fire trucks as an example, to keep those areas clear of that dimension, for example, that middle gray area? So I think they're referring to one of the diagrams you were showing.
Yes.
Good answer. Good answer. And there was another question about parking, and I think it was like, can you actually tell it where to put the parking, right? Could you put the parking in the
Yes.
lower left corner of the site? And you can drag these things around like blocks, and everything kind of updates around them in real time because the solve continues to happen. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Right. Okay, cool. It says, is TestFit looking, Ben here is asking, are TestFit looking to also go into the direction of developing land, such as generative design for surface level design of the site, cut and fill, and even
Ooh,
reticulation?
we released our first cut and fill features 2 weeks ago. So yes, you'll be, minimally supported in 3 dimensions with a cut and or land. It's like a land configurator. You can set, max slopes and stuff. That's continued, like the work on that is ongoing to make it better and better and better. Add retaining walls, gravity walls, more civil engineering strategies, like to try to give them, into the hands of architects we can. So I hope that answers the question.
Hopefully,
Minimally viable.
hopefully it does. Right. All right. So here's I think this is a good question that people would love to kind of see, like the case study. What are the best examples of the evolution of the project using TestFit to reality?
You know, I would say since the introduction of generative design, 99.99999% of all test fits are just trash. They're useless, right?
Waste. Yep.
And that's our goal, is like to kill all the stuff that's not useful. The ones that do survive, like it's not going to go from test fit into, construction production, unless you're one of those companies that has built a process specifically around test fit output. Then it will, maybe. There's a handful of them that I could refer to. But in almost every case, it's going into another app for, storytelling purposes, or call it design risk mitigation. Like Britton, when you have that button where it says make it into BIM, like thank God someone's doing something with massing that isn't TestFit, right? Like that is the point of why I hate massing, is that it's not intelligent. You don't actually know that these walls are walls and these doors, they need doors. Like there's a whole lot of complexity and risk involved with massing that you don't really see.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think downstream apps, like Snaptrude being one of them, especially as it's gotten more capable, become more viable, right? And then,
Yeah, it's important just to reiterate that TestFit is a very early in the process tool that you use to get to the next steps, right? Because design is many steps. It might be many apps. It might only be a few apps. Everybody has their own workflow, their own special incantation there. But like there definitely have been instances where firms started with TestFit and ended with real buildings, right? And
oh
so
yeah, yes, we would not be here today without that being real.
right,
Yeah, yeah.
right. And I assume the same is true for Snaptrude.
Yeah, absolutely. We're probably earlier than TestFit in this journey. We released earlier this year our full production version, so our projects are still in design. But yeah, we've had some really cool stuff going on across the country. We do a lot of showcase projects of projects that people use Snaptrude on as well. So um, we're a little
Great.
bit further down the pipeline from TestFit. Obviously, we're going concept to maybe early schematic. But yeah, what were you saying, Clifton?
It's a whole lot easier to, rework an office space than to build a 300,000 square foot apartment building, so like
It's
the case
difficult to
studies
do.
are different, and honestly, like the entry points into the market are different, and they need to be for the technology to evolve and for the product market fit to be hit.
Very much so.
Another question here for Clifton. How is FAR measured? Does TestFit define or allow you to change that definition?
Uh, Technical question here. I
Putting you on the
believe
spot.
we have like a knowledge base article or something on this. So TestFit does not really allow you to manipulate how FAR is calculated, but it is all conditioned area, I believe. And if you want your garages to calculate in the FAR, you have to change them to a conditioned area. So
There
there
you
you
go.
go. Gross
All right.
area and the site area together. So
So this is a question next about regionality. Can the system be adopted for Europe and UK conditions? And number two, can it reflect European costs? And then the last one is, how much does TestFit cost?
um yeah, so $1 billion. TestFit, yeah, you can run it in metric. You can run it, with the traffic being on the left side of the road, if that's a meaningful difference. What is not handled is like compliance to law. So like a lot of TestFit's core algorithms are IBC inspired. So like a building area drives how many exits we need in TestFit. It's similar in Europe, but it's not exactly the same. You can trial TestFit if you'd like in the configurator, but we do offer like 5 different options now. There's an entirely free version of TestFit called the Urban Planner. There's I want to say an $1,800 option that includes parking, but no other configurators. And then if you're like, you know, a, move in a lot of apartment units, you need to come talk to us because we have custom pricing on the generative design high end. So
Great.
um,
You want to talk to pricing on the Snaptrude side of things, Britton, real quick before we wrap up?
Yep, $1,200 per user per year. We do obviously larger packages, but and our product is currently used in Europe uh, and all over Asia today, so and South America.
Fantastic. Well, we don't have time for any other questions, but feel free to reach out to these individuals and these companies to ask additional questions. I encourage everyone to try the demos at the links on the screen share right now, snaptrude.com and testfit.io. If you go to TestFit, you can download the free Urban Planner, and you can use a Generative Design Explorer for free to try it out. And I encourage everybody to give these tools a spin and get demos of them so that you can ask even more specific questions to your markets and your workflows. And you can learn more about individuals like the founders of TestFit and Snaptrude on my podcast, among many others, where we really track the pulse of what's going on with technology and architecture and the AEC industry at large at trxl.co. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for all the great questions from all of the attendees. This has been a fantastic webinar. And thanks, Britton. Thank you, Clifton. This has been a lot of great information and very fun.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see everybody next time.